Hi lacrosse fans, welcome back to episode number 13 of the Sticks and Pics Lacrosse podcast presented by Lacrosse Unlimited. Lacrosse Unlimited provides the best equipment, apparel, and lacrosse footwear since 1990. Check out their website at lacrosseunlimited.com for all your lacrosse needs. I'm your host, Will Petchnig, alongside co-host Jake Fox. We as athletes, fans, and humans have to come together and listen to our African American communities. We're all the same race, we are human. It's important to educate yourself and treat others with dignity and respect. In today's episode, we talk to one of the game's best ambassadors who turned himself into one of the most successful face-off specialists in the outdoor game. We talk about his career at Penn State, his experience winning gold at the 2018 Worlds in Israel for the United States, and playing in the PLL and what the league is all about. He also shares some awesome insight about being a face-off specialist in lacrosse, and we dive into his face-off academy and what it's all about. He holds about every single face-off record you can think of from Major League Lacrosse. A longtime member of the New York Lizards, he won the 2015 MLL championship as well as being named the league MVP. He has truly revolutionized the position of the face-off man. The recently retired member of the PLL Redwoods, please welcome Greg Gurenlian.
Thanks, guys.
Greg, we're excited to have you on. Obviously, I got to meet you in Israel, and obviously knowing a bunch of guys in the PLL, I've heard a lot of stories about you and the guy you are. So we're excited to have you on here and get to learn a little more about you.
Oh, man, that's scary. All right.
Before we get started, we got to ask you, how'd the Beast nickname come about?
Yeah, so if anybody's interested in that whole story, they can go on my YouTube channel. My last ride, we had an episode almost dedicated to that. But basically, I started playing lacrosse in high school at Springfield, Delaware County, and it was a big deal. That was like the number one sport. So I tried playing it, but I was awful. And obviously, the learning curve. So I was about 65, 170 pounds, and I was finally playing the first team sport in which I was allowed to hit people. So all I did was run around on GBs and try to earhole every person on the field. And the older guys, my friend George, who got me into lacrosse, started calling me Greg Beast because my best friend's name is Greg too. So they would start calling me Greg Beast instead. And all the older guys would, like during the JV games, would be yelling Beast on the sideline because I'd be trying to hit everybody, but I couldn't even catch and throw. So it was basically this joke nickname.
Oh, that's amazing. So you mentioned you didn't really start in lacrosse. You didn't start till high school. So what was really your introduction to sports growing up in Springfield for you?
My parents were pretty awesome. I was allowed to do or try anything I wanted except football. And so my first, competition type of thing was karate. When I was 6, I started karate. I did that for about 10 years. My parents were very cool about you can try anything you want, but you have to see it through. And competitively, I got into the tournaments and the kumite and all that stuff with karate. And they said, you can stop doing karate when you get your black belt. So I had to keep going until I got my black belt. But yeah, wrestling and karate were the real big ones. Baseball, I was kind of obsessed with for a very long time until 8th grade was the last year I played baseball. And then soccer was my best sport by far until I started getting good at lacrosse. Soccer was my jam. So a lot of people are kind of like, really? But yeah, I was an all-state soccer player. I'll make it rain out here.
Wow. Looking back now, I think when people look at you, that's not the first thing they think is a soccer and baseball player. So you mentioned your buddy got you into lacrosse. How was your development throughout high school, getting used to it? Did you start basically as like a face-off guy, or did that come after?
So my very first position, my friends were all trying to egg me on and like, you got to play lacrosse. Like, that's what all the cool kids do. So I was like, well, I can't catch and throw. So they were like, oh, you could play goalie. Now, the caveat to this is the only lacrosse I had ever seen was Wings games. Everybody in Springfield and Delaware County went to Wings games on Friday nights. That's when, my first Wings game, Gary Gate was still playing. Jake Berge, Dallas Elliott, Gabby Rowe, all those guys. So I was like, oh yeah, I can pad up and play goalie. Like all those guys kind of do is just sit there. And then I get to the field and they're like, nah, man, like here's this big stick and get a chest protector and good luck. And I was like, where are all the other pads? And my buddy, we were like, let's practice and get good at this. First shot hit me in the kneecap and I was like, done. No goalie. Forget this. This is ridiculous. So I wanted to be a midi. And I came out and like I said, I couldn't catch and throw. In our very first JV game, I saw face-offs and I was like, holy crap, like the ball's already on the ground. I can handle that. And I went out there and went 4 for 4 in my first JV game. I had no idea what I was doing. So the head coach of the JV team, Chris Britton, was like a face-off legend at Springfield. And then he took me under his wing and basically showed me the standing neutral grip stance and how to face off. And I just took it from there.
One thing I found interesting, we were talking beforehand, you mentioned that you went through no club lacrosse, which is basically seen as like a death sentence now when it comes to recruiting and everything like that. That's not a thing. But you actually traveled with your high school. What was that like for recruiting process-wise for you?
So recruiting wasn't a thing for me because I was playing lacrosse because I wanted to be one of the cool kids. And then I almost quit after my freshman year because you're just getting harassed and made fun of for being bad at it. And when I stuck with it and eventually started, like my first recruiting letter didn't come until about July of my going into my senior year. Back then, there wasn't really club programs. Duke's was like the first club program. And they were Springfield based. Duke's Tavern in Springfield is where that started. And I wasn't good enough to be on that team until like very, very late. I played in a couple tournaments, but whenever the decision was there to play high school or for Duke's, I always played with Springfield. And I think we benefited greatly from that because we all played year round. And our team back then was a juggernaut. I mean, we would start every season like 12-0. It basically, like back then, Pennsylvania lacrosse, every high school was in the same state tournament at the end of the year. Didn't matter if you were private, whatever, which was awesome. And the public schools really were just as dominant as the Haverford schools and Malverns of the day. So it was awesome. But back then, you had Champ Camp and you had Top 205. And if you made the all-star game at those, you went to college. And that's basically the way it was. And luckily for me, after my junior year, I went and did both of those. And Springfield High School competed at Champ Camp. And I made the all-star game at both. And, recruiting was different back then because Top 205, you're getting coached by coaches. And now it's like rare for that to happen. But you're getting recruited after your junior year. So you can talk to the coaches. They had college night where I still remember Lars Tiffany was standing at a table with brochures for Penn State lacrosse and you're getting recruited by him. And that's the way it was. So you actually knew the people that were recruiting you face to face. So it was very singular, but a lot of pressure because you got to show up for like that event,
Yeah, exactly. And you ended up going to Penn State. How did that come about? Did you have any other offers to any other schools or was it just Penn State?
Yeah, so Penn State was in my family. My dad's side of the family, like all of my cousins, all of my aunts and uncles almost went to Penn State. So I grew up, I could tell you every Penn State football quarterback from like 1989 on. I was obsessed. And every year we would go to Beaver Stadium in like an RV, and it was a huge thing. So I looked at, when I started getting recruiting letters, my first recruiting letter written to me was from Towson. And I didn't know what Towson was. I didn't know anything about colleges. So then I started doing my research. And then that summer, they went to the Final Four with Coach Seaman. And I was like, whoa, okay. And then I got a recruiting letter from Penn State. And it was like the light bulb went off like, oh, my God, I can get to Penn State through lacrosse. Like, up until then, it was just grades. But then it was like, okay, like I can get in playing this sport. That'd be incredible. And that's when I got that Penn State recruiting letter, lacrosse went from something Greg loves to do to an investment. Right. It went from buying my sticks at Play It Again to my dad being like, what do you need? You need a new stick? You need a new helmet? Like, what do it became an investment of time. And so Penn State was like here. And not only because of that, but I also was very definitively I wanted to study kinesiology. And Penn State has one of the best kinesiology programs in the country. Towson has one too. But the other schools that I was considering were Loyola, Maryland, because Cottle left that year from Loyola to Maryland. So he ended up recruiting me at both. And then the final school, believe it or not, was Butler, because Coach Calhoun was my coach at 205, and I thought he was the man. So he actually flew me out and my best friend to recruit both of us in Butler. So I gave it serious consideration for a little bit. But at the end of the day, it was like something drastic would have had to happen to pull me from Penn State, because it was my dream.
When you went to Penn State, obviously they had a long tenured coach and Coach Glenn Thiel. He was there for 33 years, and you kind of got the end bit of his career. What kind of influence did he have on your game and the way that you treat the game of lacrosse, and even the way you possibly coach?
Yeah, I mean, so everybody loves Glenn. I mean, he's literally he's just like a character, and he has a great heart. And I'm actually very happy that I got to have like an old school coach right before, the whole new school revolution happened. Because he also had great assistants. And I believe the assistant coaches did the majority of the recruiting. And he had phenomenal ones. I mean, Lars recruited me. Loved Lars. I mean, to the day I die, Lars Tiffany's one of my favorite people. And then I actually got a really big boost when Guy Van Arsdale showed up as the assistant. Guy Van Arsdale was awesome for me. He came in like day one of my junior year and was like, I've watched your film. I coached at Notre Dame against you. You're our guy. Take it from there. And it really let the pressure off of my shoulders, and I just went out and performed. So we had really good assistants that did a good job. And I think the cool thing about Penn State was a lot of the guys that went to Penn State were either guys that were from the Philly area that always wanted to go there, or they were really superior athletes, but they didn't get recruited by the big time, powerhouses. And so we all had a chip on our shoulder, and we were just talking about it with a couple of the guys I went to school with last week, how our strength training was way ahead of the curve back then. Like back then, I don't even think Syracuse had strength training. I think it was like they still just ran, right? Like that was like the thing everybody knew. But a lot of schools didn't have dedicated strength training. So our thing was like, that's what was great about Glenny. Like he was just like, look, we're not better than anybody with our sticks, so we got to be physically superior, right? And you have Lars Tiffany just like, you got to put on 20 pounds of muscle so we can just cave people in. So that's how we played. And it was cool. It was a great part, great thing to be around, and everyone was like-minded with that.
No, I love that. I was fortunate enough to have Lars as my defensive coach with the Iroquois team. And I know Coach P at the time wasn't too thrilled about that, but I love Lars. He's a great coach, and it was awesome to be able to play with him. And I've had a bunch of buddies who are at UVA now who love him. Your time at Penn State went pretty well for yourself personally. You're top 5 in basically every face-off category in school records. What does it mean for you to leave a legacy like that on a school that you grew up loving?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it was special. It was funny because Glenn didn't really put an emphasis on statistics and stuff. Like he didn't really care. For instance, my junior year, we actually tied the NCAA record for fastest goal from the start of a game, and it was never reported. We scored in 5 seconds, and we tied the NCAA record. And I remember all of my teammates, that's all they talked about all summer. But when Guy Van Arsdale got there, he took it seriously, and they updated all the stats. In my junior year, he's like, hey, by the way, did you know you're the all-time leader in faceoff wins? I was like, no, that's neat. But to be honest, the most important thing that was cool for me was when I got to Penn State, no one knew about Penn State lacrosse really. And my freshman year, we made the tournament for the first time in school history. We went to Towson and got absolutely destroyed. But that was a really cool marker for us. It was incredible. And then my junior year, we went back a second time, and we had Maryland on the ropes, and then we lost in the last seconds. And we did it with a walk-on goalie because Brett Queener actually came in as a freshman. He's going to be mad I tell this story. But he was ineligible. And because he got the starting spot, the guy who was going to be a senior starter quit. And then we had no goalies going into the spring. And we had open tryouts. And a kid named Chris Courteau came in as a walk-on from the club team and was our goalie the entire year. And somehow we made it to the playoffs, and we had Maryland on the ropes. So what I'm most proud about when I left was we went from a program that's generally 15, 16 in the country to, we lost on the last day of my senior year, and Georgetown beat us in the last 2 seconds of the game. And that game was to see who got into the tournament. So, I'm walking away going, man, we were 5 seconds away from going to the tournament 3 out of 4 years. And, that's where the legacy was for us as a class. That's what I was most proud of. Then they took a dip, obviously, and then Tambroni came in, and the rest is history. But that's what I'm most proud about, is that I got to be part of a squad that made it for the first time ever in school history to the dance.
Yeah, no, certainly. And a lot of good memories from college, obviously. And we're going to have a little bit of fun here right now. So we're going to do our word association game. Basically, Jake's going to give you a word, and you got to think of someone in the lacrosse world that you've played with or have seen play that first comes to mind. You can explain, or you don't have to. It's completely up to you.
Okay.
The first word is goal scorer.
John Grant Jr. I mean, do I have to elaborate after that, or?
No, his name gets brought up a lot. Yeah. Playmaker.
Actually, first name that comes to me is Brian Boyle, who I played with at Penn State, and he was at Notre Dame. One of the nastiest split dodges from X you've ever seen in your life. And he was my roommate. So, yeah, that's definitely the first person that comes to my mind.
Detail-oriented.
Deemer Class. Deemer Class has built his FCL online platform. No one works harder than him. He's obsessive, and that's why we get along so well. So definitely Deemer.
Passion.
Coach Petramala. I remember being on Team USA in 2014. The energy he brought to the defense every day. I know Chris Eck and I would leave our face-off meeting with Coach Cassis and kind of stick an ear out and just listen to the offensive and defensive huddles. And I always loved getting an ear and listening to Petro talk to his guys, and then Tambo talk to the offensive guys. So, yeah, definitely Dave Petramala for sure.
Yeah, no, trust. I played for him for 4 years, and yeah, if there's anyone who will watch the same clip over 20 times and make 50 different notes about it, it's Petro. Greatest of all time.
Gary Gate. I mean, we can argue about it, and it's fun to talk about stuff, but come on, man. I mean, the dude is absolutely the greatest lacrosse player ever. And if he was born American, he would have been one of the best football players of all time, too, in my opinion.
The next word is brick wall.
Drew Adams. Just, in my opinion, the best goalie of all time. And, obviously we played together in high school, college, and the pros, and with Team USA. And he's done things. He did things that were so nuts so regularly that it watered down how great he was. It was point blank shot with his foot with 2 seconds left. That was pretty cool. It's it was the greatest save ever, but we just get so used to it.
Agitator.
Oh, Brian Spallina. Come on. Brian Spallina is the toughest guy to never throw a punch of all time. He would get under your skin. He would make you want to fight your own friends, but you would never end up getting in a tussle with him. He's just pure magic.
Next word is Fogo.
I mean, that word is – I hate that word.
So that was actually something I was going to bring up later, but we'll talk about it now. Is Fogo a bad word to you?
So literally the terminology of face off and then get off makes sense. It's just that I think it has gotten such a bad rap because of the era of the Fogo, right? You had guys out there teaching cheating wide open on YouTube, proudly posting videos of them teaching kids cheating. And it became such a laughing stock all the time. And I remember when we started the Face Off Academy, one of the things that Jerry, Chris, and I talked about is dude, every guy who's ever, during my youth in high school and college, any guy who's ever tried to give me a face-off tip has always said, do you know about the 2-finger trick? And it's that's the first thing they always said. And I was this is ridiculous. And it was because of this whole Fogo thing. And I still hate the term face-off man, face-off specialist, face-off athlete. But when I look at a Trevor Baptiste or a TD, I don't think Fogo at all, right? It just doesn't fit. The name doesn't fit. So That's why I don't like the term.
No, I completely get that. And especially someone like Trevor, you mentioned, like you see him and his development in the box game, especially playing against him this year. If you call Trevor a Fogo, then you're just a moron.
Especially because most of us, I think especially the later guys, like TD and Trevor and I all started a little bit later, and I don't think that's a coincidence. And I tell kids all the time, I didn't become a face-off specialist until I played with Rochester my rookie year. I played man up, I played midi my whole career up until the pros. So, I had never been called that before. So it was just weird. You're right.
All right. The last word I have, because my favorite word, and we mean it in the nicest way, jackass.
Man, how do I say this in the nicest possible way?
You could go Nick Casello with that one if you want to. Throw him under the bus.
It's tough because, to me, jackass is like a totally endearing term. And it's just somebody who just creates chaos. And that would be like Jeff Snyder, right? Like Snyder and I were total jackasses to each other. And I have never talked smack to any other person except for him because it was actually fun. So that, you could go with Ocello for sure. But I have such a history with Jeff, and him and I literally tried to kill each other so many times. But we also respect each other a great deal. So, that's probably where I go with it, because jackass is an endearing term to me.
Yeah, no, certainly. And we're going to get into we're going to go back to face-offs here. You are a face-off specialist, and that's what you're best at. So, I used to take box lacrosse face-offs all the time, but the field face-offs are just so much different, and I just wasn't that guy. And being a face-off guy, I know how much pride you take into it. So what does that kind of mean to you to be a top face-off guy in the game of lacrosse, and how much pride do you take in that?
I take a lot of pride in what I do. I think it was just instilled in me when I was younger my dad always said that if you have to do something, it doesn't matter if it's facing off, cutting the lawn, or your schoolwork, you do it as best as you can if you're going to do it. I think what's interesting about face-offs for me is, like I said, I never really identified as a face-off specialist. And then when I blew my knee out in 2011, I had to sit that summer out. And before then, I was a full-time strength coach who played lacrosse on the weekends. But after I missed the 2011 season, I'm sitting on the couch watching my buddies, play out there. And I'm like, man, like, I don't think I respected my talent in this as much as I should have. I think I could be special in this if I just dedicate it. So that's when I wrote the initial FOA system, was during that summer when I was on the couch. And then Jerry and Chris and I just tweaked it and created the Face-Off Academy. And that's when I really started taking care of the craft, because I was like, it's just biomechanics. It's the only position in lacrosse where the ball's constantly in the same spot. It's always the same motion. So just like a power clean or a golf swing or a baseball swing, we can train this. And once I came back 2012 and I had a record year, I was like, whoa. And then every kid we started coaching was killing everybody. And that's when we really noticed we're onto something. So I went from a lacrosse player sometimes to a devout face-off guy to then somebody who became obsessed with helping other guys be great too. And it was a cool couple of years of transition for me. So I think with a position that a lot of people don't understand, and it's constantly under attack, and we always talk about it. If someone goes out and drops 6 goals in a game, they're an epic hero. But if TD goes 65%, Quint Kesnick has a heart attack. And we got to get rid of face-offs. So, Jerry and I talk about this a lot. There's plenty of people that want to make a quick buck coaching face-offs, but I feel like Jerry and I are the ones who are constantly sticking our necks out to defend the position and also progress it, right? To make it better and give it tweaks that'll be good for the game.
Something you brought up a little bit there, which I've always found interesting, is the actual talk of removing the face-off from the game in a way. In your mind, how important is a face-off to a game in terms of just, the development of the game and everything, but also the future of the position? Because, there are guys that you're training and guys that I know, for example, the guy you trained who I'm buddies with, Justin Ignacio, who's at Ohio State, one of the best face-off guys. He's not like, I've known Justin for a while. I make fun of him all the time. His hands aren't the best. He but these guys get great college educations are great because they're a face-off guy and they, take one part of the game, which is similar to an attackman who can shoot or a defenseman that can take the ball away. And they perfect this thing and they get a scholarship and they get to go to college because of it. So in your mind, is there any way you can see them removing this from the game, one? And two, what do you see the future of the face-off being?
Yeah, well, I think we could do it in a couple parts. Like, we could start with what the argument is. And I'm always somebody who's willing to debate something, but you can't be nonsensical about it. Like, you have to make sense, right? So what are the common nonsensical things I hear? The sport's becoming too specialized. You literally have a guy standing in one spot in front of the goal with a different size stick than everybody else. No one has an issue with this. Okay. Tom Brady has 0 punt returns in his career, right? Ron Hextall used to shoot full ice shots. Never mind. That's a bad. But you know what I'm saying? Like, every team sports are supposed to have specialized positions. You can go watch team handball and their specialized positions. That's what team sports are. Everyone has a function. So when someone throws that out there, I go, I dismiss you. You're just ignorant. Like, you don't belong in this conversation. But I'm also somebody who says, could it be better? Yeah. If you love something and you're passionate about it, then you constantly want it to be better, right? So, when we look at the face-off position, that's why the PLL and I work together, and I give the PLL so much credit because they were like, look, give us some face-off rules that are innovative, and we worked together on it. We slid the ball up higher on the heads so you can't get in a lockup, and we made it quicker. So all the things people hate about face-offs, we got rid of all of them, and there's no arguments left, right? The mechanics of the setup are 3 times faster. We're down and ready to go in 2 seconds. There's no lockups, and the wings are closer, so it's a 3-on-3 face-off. They got rid of everything. The problem I have is I understand the real reason people don't like the face-off. Either you don't value it enough so you don't bother to go recruit and get face-off guys, which there's no excuse, by the way. We coach thousands of kids. Or it's an ego and a monetary thing where you say, I hate the fact that I have to call Greg Gurenlian or Jerry Raganese and ask him about face-off recruits because I can't just evaluate it myself because I don't quite understand the position, right? And what drives me nuts is we don't flaunt that. We have just countless free ways to try to assess and give coaches information to help them coach our guys. We're doing a 4-part masterclass on Zoom. It's free. We have almost 400 coaches signed up. We're literally giving them our FOA system. We're telling them how to coach face-off guys. We're saying we make money doing this. Here's free information. So when you have a room filled with coaches or other people that are on the rules committee who have no idea what a face-off is or how to coach it, making decisions on the face-off, it seems a little nonsensical to me. I feel like at some point, everyone can swallow their ego and say, let's take a look at this and see how it's best for everybody. I understand the initial apprehension a couple years ago because before us, everyone taught cheating and it was a mockery. I get that. That's why you don't trust us, okay? But we've opened ourselves up to refs. We do free referees clinics, how to officiate it black and white, how to make it better. We try to give rules recommendations like the draw circle. We do everything we can to try to progress the game forward with this position because objectively, before I was even a face-off specific guy, if you had told me you want to take face-offs out, I would have been like, why? Plus, everyone conveniently forgets they did that already in the NCAA. I think it was in the 70s. They took it out and it was a mess, and they had to add it halfway through the year, right? If anybody watched the PL All-Star game, tell me how boring the third quarter was when they got rid of face-offs. Attackmen would score and then run right back on defense and ride. They couldn't even celebrate. Everybody was golf clapping pretty much the whole quarter. It was a mess. So, I just wish people would just be, I want to say the nice terms. Like, I wish people would just relax and let's just figure it out, and then it'll be good for everybody.
Who in your mind, obviously everyone knows the Trevors, yourself, TD, obviously. Who in your mind is the future guy, someone that might be in college now or going into college that, you see as possibly being that next stepping stone in the face-off world?
it's interesting because, and this goes back to the rules committee, right? Every time the rules committee has changed the rules, the disparity between the top 4 or 5 guys and everyone else has increased. You know, every year they change the rules in the MLL, my face-off percentage went up. So in the quarter at the PLL where and if anybody watched the PLL All-Star game, Trevor and I were the face-off guys, but I had just torn my hammy. So I only took like 1 or 2 just to be part of the game, and I was done. So Trevor faced off against regular middies the whole All-Star game. In the quarter that they did, they went to a ball drop, okay, like hockey. First off, no referee on earth wants to do that. Trust me. Matty Palin was livid, okay? But 2, in that quarter when they did the ball drop, Trevor won a higher percentage of face-offs. I think he won almost every single one. So my point is, when you tweak the rules for this one guy, the cream's always going to rise to the top. Some people just have a knack for it. So instead of changing the rule for this guy every year, just bring more dudes to the party. Make it a 3-on-3 from the beginning, and you'll have a 3-on-3 face-off. And that being said, I don't know. Yeah, there are guys out there that are this close to the cusp right now. You have Zach Tucci at UNC. You have Jordan Ginder at Duke. You have Inacio. You have guys that are knocking on the door. Tyler Sandoval, who came in as a freshman at Princeton. Connor Calderon, who was a freshman at Maryland. Angelo Petrakis, who's the freshman at Cornell. There are a wave of guys coming up. But the question is, what do they do with the rules? Right? We're in a rule change year, and they love changing the rules. But are they going to do something that makes sense, like move the ball up higher on the heads or bring the wings in closer? Or are they going to go, let's get crazy. You can't clamp anymore, right? And then everyone's going to go, what does that mean? And NCAA is going to go, I don't know. We'll find out, right? And that's what happens. So if they do something like that and guys are just smacking the ball at each other, or they're trying to, there's like a whole bunch of gray area for the officials, maybe guys who are super athletic, two-way middies might have a better chance, like the old school, like Max Seavald type of guy, or Zach Courier, or maybe they just put long poles up there. Like, who knows? But those are the guys with the talent right now who've put in years of work that I see having breakout years next year.
Yeah, no, certainly. And it will definitely be interesting to see the development of the face-offs and where they go with all these new rules that could possibly come into play with the evolution of face-offs. So we're going to talk about your MLL career here. You were drafted in the second round, 23rd overall to Rochester. Can you kind of take us back to draft day and what that meant to you and your family?
Draft day, man, that was so cool. Every part of my career, when I was in high school, I never really thought I was going to play college. And then when I was in college, I had a great junior year. And all of a sudden it was like, I'm getting like a letter, like, do you want to come to the combine at the MLL? And I was like, oh my God, like, this happened. Like, I never thought this was going to happen. So I remember going to the combine and doing really well. However, they didn't have another face-off guy. I think Jake Dean was the other guy. He was an LSM, but that was like, I remember going out of that. So back then they had a combine. Then you had interviews with the GMs and coaches. Then you had like an all-star game. And I just remember after that game being like, yeah, I mean, like, of course I want every face-off. Like, I'm not going against a face-off guy. So I just assumed I was going to get drafted. And then I ended up being like the 4th face-off guy taken. And I just remember sitting there, and it's just so funny how that competitive switch goes from I'm just happy to be here to I'm going to crush all of you who didn't draft me, right? But I remember that aha moment of, you get to practice, you get to training camp, you're like, oh my God, it's John Grant Jr. Oh my God, like, that's Brody Merrill. Like, and I was still new to lacrosse. So I just remember my first game going out there on the field. We're playing the Lizards, and the 2006 Lizards had 50 Hall of Famers on it. And on the first face-off, Pete Vlahakis, who owned me in college, smokes me. And the ball goes forward. We luckily get the ground ball, and I run down the field and score in 4 seconds. And I couldn't believe what just happened. And the rest of the game, I picked it up, and I went over 50%. And I remember Kevin Cassis was on the team with me. And we're in the locker room. We just won. It was a big deal. And I just remember being like, oh, my God, this is unbelievable. Like, I'm going to play professional lacrosse, and I'm going to stick around. Like, this is crazy. And, the rest is history. But that feeling of playing on a professional level, and that was the new Paytech Park at Rochester back when they were getting tons of fans. I got to play with Zawicki and Casey Powell came onto our team for a little bit and all this. I was just like, this is surreal, man. Like being part of this and being able to be with the best players in the world when I just picked this stick up a few years ago is just too much to handle.
I love the fact that you bring up Zawicki. So me and Will are both Ottawa guys, so we grew up like idolizing Zawicki, and we actually just talked to him not long ago about this. So that was pretty funny actually to bring him up.
He was so good.
So you did Rochester for 2 seasons. You went out to San Francisco for 2 seasons. You did a year with the Toronto Nationals, a year with Chicago, and then finally ending up in New York. Is that right?
Yeah, it's listed that way. The reality is so after my second season, Alex Smith was a senior, and Alex Smith was like a great college faceoff guy. So they picked him up. And I just remember calling, the GMs and just being like, look, there's no reason for us to both be here. I was about a 50% guy, and you have a guy who's coming in who, went to the Final Four last year. So, just trade me, no big deal. And they ended up doing that to San Fran, and that's when I really started to find my way. And that 2008 season, I remember the second to last game of the season, we came to Long Island, and I went 31 for 41 with 22 GBs. I just remember that game like it was yesterday. And then we went out, played one more game. And then after that, the recession hit. So the next year, I remember getting all excited because, wow, like we're playing in San Jose Stadium. It's a phenomenal stadium. Like, the owners of the Dragons were unbelievable. And they were pouring money into it. They were doing ticket sales. And then I get a call from Doug Locker. He's like, it's over. He's like, we have to retract. And then they reorganized the whole league, which was smart. But based on where you lived, you went and played. But the problem is Pete Vlahakis was at Long Island, and he was like a world beater. So they told me, you're going to go play for Toronto. And I had just started my own strength training business in New York. And I was like, I can't do that, actually. So they put me on waivers. And I remember trying to go back and forth with Boston and be like, hey, can I come play for Boston? And then off of waivers, Chicago picked me up. And I remember calling them and saying, look, I can't play for you guys. I have this business. I have to be real close to New York. And they just held my rights all summer, wouldn't trade me, wouldn't let anybody have me. And I sat on the pile. And I was like, wow, this is going to be how my pro career ends. And then in the supplemental draft the following year, Joe Spallina, and who else was in the group right there? Jim Mule. They remembered that game against Long Island, and they picked me up, and I got lucky.
No, that's awesome. You ended up spending your last 8 years in the MLL there. Obviously, it was close for you, and it worked out kind of the way you wanted to. And that's really where the beast kind of took off and became a name in the lacrosse world. The one thing that always kind of stood out, though, was 2015 for you statistically and everything, and becoming the first basically face-off specialist, basically not an attacker or midfielder, to win MVP. What was that like for you? And what was so different about that season for you personally that kind of, blew up your name in a way?
I started talking about this with Kark during his podcast, and it was a perfect storm. It just worked out. Like 2014 was the worst year of my life, lacrosse-wise especially. Go out, World Games, during the Team USA selection process, I had like a shredded left rate labrum. And I knew that I just was like, back then, the World Games in, 2008 or something, or 2010, was it? Okay, so 2010, they brought just Alex Smith out. The World Games before that, in 2006, they had no face-off guy. They learned that lesson, right, after Jeff just pumped them. So I remember going to telling Coach Meade during the tryout process, like, I don't think I can do this because I'm dying right now. And I was like, and I don't know if I'm going to get surgery or not. It was a tough time for me with work. Like, I didn't want to be laid up. But I was like, I can't do this whole I can't be the only guy, because my biggest nightmare was in my only shot of the World Games, halfway through, my shoulder just goes, and now I can't face off for us, and we lose the gold medal, and I'll just be remembered as that guy. And I remember telling Coach Mead that. I think there was a misunderstanding because he didn't take it very well. And then I ended up playing in the spring in the MLL, and I was like, all right, I'm just going to play as long as I can, and then when I can't play anymore, I'll get surgery on it. And I ended up having a phenomenal year. And Chris Eck was tabbed as the face-off guy for Team USA, and we had a game, and I did really well that game. So next day, I get a call from Coach Tambo, and he's like, hey, like, we never really followed up with you. Like, what was the deal? And I explained it to him. And he's like, wow, we completely didn't think that. We just thought, like, you didn't want to do it. I'm like, what? So he talked to Coach Mead, and Coach Mead graciously called me. He's like, what if we bring you on as the second guy? I was like, done. If I can come in as a second guy, then all that pressure, I can just go out and play. And if I can't do it, then Chris can do it. Because Chris was, me and Chris had battles for years as 1 and 2 in the league. So I went out there, I got a cortisone shot in my shoulder, and I played with a cortisone shot. And, I felt good until we lost the gold medal game. But that after we lost that gold medal game, I think 4 weeks later or 5 weeks later, we were back in Denver for the semifinal, and we lost in overtime or like with 2 seconds left to Denver in the semifinals. And I was like, get me out of this state. I'm never coming back to this place again. And I think I'm done lacrosse. Like, I remember me and Drew Adams were both burned out. We were like, we're done, dude. And then, after a couple months, you start to realize, like, you get this like mean streak of like, no, I'm coming back and I want to just destroy everybody. And after the shoulder surgery, I felt amazing. And we traded for Paul, obviously. That was a big deal. And then they changed the rules. So in 2015, one thing I always credit the MLL with is every year they would call the veterans for the face-off position and ask them, what can we do better? And I remember very vividly being like, this should be college rules. I'm out here teaching clinics all the time, and we have this old school kill yourself version of face-offs. And so they were like, all right, we're going to make you guys come off the line. We're going to take your hands off the plastic, but you can still keep the ball in the back of your stick. And I just remember sitting there like, you guys are in trouble now, because I'm coaching this position every day, college rules. None of you guys are out here not cheating, and you're going to have a world of hurting. I remember going out after that first weekend and be like, you guys are all in trouble now, man. And I told Clark before, like, I wanted to go out and retire everybody. Like, my job was to put people in body bags that whole summer because I was pissed. And so, yeah, it was a perfect storm. But you also saw right after that year, all of those older face-off guys that I used to work against, play against, all kind of stopped. And that's when you saw that new rookie class come in with all the other guys who, were used to the college rules. And that's kind of that, I'm very grateful because I got to be part of a bunch of different, generations. I faced off against Paul Cannabine, and then I faced off against Trevor Baptiste. Like, I really lucked out in how long I was able to do that.
No, for sure. And you kind of mentioned that wave of new guys coming in, and that kind of, led into what we'll call the first retirement.
Yeah.
What was the main reason for you kind of saying like it was time for you to step away from the game initially?
I mean, I was a dad now, and my father never missed a game of anything I ever did, but he worked relentlessly. And I just, with my job and how often I travel and what I do, being gone all summer and then also being gone 2 or 3 weekends a month just wasn't gonna cut it as a dad. And my wife, who's been incredible for years and has always been in my corner with my career and let me do my thing, it was time for her to be able to have me at home to help out and do that. But the other thing, so basically the discussion was when we were hinting at maybe I should try to go for 2018 World Games. She's like, all right, well, you just got to pick. You can either do the World Games or you can play 2018 in the pros. And that's when I was like, I've proven everything I have to prove in the MLL. Like, as far as how much money I make compared to how often I'm gone, like, that doesn't add up as much. But I don't have a gold medal, and I really have, I have to make up for what I did in 2014, the fact that we came up short. So that was an easy decision for me, for sure.
Yeah, no, certainly. And spending time with your family is always very special. So before we get into the PLL, we're going to do a little fun here with our teammate challenge. So basically, Jake's going to ask you some questions, and you got to think of a teammate that comes to mind for these questions. They're pretty funny.
Okay.
And we're looking at basically high school superlatives in a way. Most likely to be the locker room prankster.
Oh man, that would have been me. I would say I would say Jerry Raganese.
All right. Most likely to miss the team bus.
Tommy Palasek for sure.
Oh, I can see Tommy missing it. Most likely to have a new outfit for each game.
Sergio Salcida. Salsa always came dressed to impress for sure.
Most likely to challenge you to a face-off in practice.
Osella. Didn't go well, but he you know what I love about Nick, man, is he's accomplished a lot, and he's a funny guy, but man, does he want to win. So he would do, like, we would go and face off against each other in practice, and it was all about, like, preparing him for the next game, and he took it serious, and I love that about him.
Most likely to be a world leader.
Brian Karalunas.
Most likely to pick up the bar tab.
Max Seaball, because I know for a fact him and I did that multiple times in the 2014 season. So, you know, Max and I are definitely in the red when it comes to our ML careers because of that.
Most likely to skip out on the bill.
Kyle Hartzell. Hartzell, are you listening?
That's awesome. I'm sure you'll hear that one. We're going to go to back to kind of coming out of your retirement here, and kind of why did you come out of retirement to play in the PLL, and the importance to you to play in that league?
Yeah, you know, when people were like, "Oh, he's coming out of retirement," I'm like, no, I'm retired. I'm done with I retired from the MLL. And, you know, like I remember speaking to the owners of the Lizards afterwards and Coach Splina, and they were very gracious. And I told them that I'm not choosing one league over the other. It's just that, you know, I've done this for a very long time in this league, and I want to, you know, be part of something fresh and new, and I want to help out with the rules. And that was my function initially with the PLL, was to be part of, you know, whether it's the council or the rules committee or whatever, and help them with that. Because I really believe that if we go with a tour-based model, that it'll pick up a lot of steam. And that, you know, they had the NBC contract. I was like, this is the future, you know, of the professional game. And when Tommy asked me, he's like, do you want to play? And I was like, well, of course I want to play, but I don't know if I can. And I told him, you know, like, contract-wise, we're going to have to come up with something that I can kind of, you know, ask my wife about, because she's been awesome about this whole situation. And she was on board. She understood from a business standpoint that it was important that I be part of something like this. So when I jumped in, it was like, look, I'm not coming out of retirement to play in the MLL. I'm literally, everybody in the PLL is a rookie. So this is just the next step for me. And we understood that it was going to be a one-year thing. So I'm eternally grateful for that opportunity, for sure.
What was it like? I mean, you went through and you became a member of the Redwoods. What was it like with that group of guys? Because your group was primarily, when they did like the base kind of theme base, you were very Ivy oriented.
We were very Notre Dame oriented.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we also had Brown guys too. You're right.
Yeah. So I mean, it was pretty cool to see that. But then on top of that, you guys like you, Harry, and Joey Walters all on the team as well.
Yeah.
How much of an impact did that make? Because you guys were fairly young with you three on there as well.
Yeah, it was interesting, right? We were looking at it, and I was like, you know, I looked at the theme, and I looked at the teams. I'm like, all right. I was like, okay, the Whip Snakes are all Maryland guys. The Atlas, you know, that's Team USA and Paul's friends. And the Redwoods guys are, oh, okay, that's Notre Dame and guys who should retire by now. Okay. And I was like, that's our theme. And look, to be honest, like, when you get thrown into a club and you don't have an affiliation, you don't really have a history, you have to make something up, right? And my theme all year was, they just put us together because they don't think we can win. they just put us together because we were just the ones who were left over, right? I told BK, like, you're the Villanova guy. I'm the Penn State guy. And I would just always get under, like, I would always light that fire. I know Tyler Steinhardt would always laugh. Like, they'd come over for practice. Or like, hey, guys, your helmets will be here in 5 minutes. Like, don't worry. And I'd be like, you know who had their helmets already? The Atlas. And I would just, poke that all the time because I just always assumed at some point we would be in the playoffs against the Atlas, and maybe down the line it would happen. The Atlas didn't make the playoffs for everybody who's listening, unfortunately. I don't know why. Oh, on the last day of the season, we crushed the Chrome, and that's why the Atlas didn't make it. As soon as this gets posted, my phone's going to light up. I know. But anyway, in all seriousness, it was cool. It was great because I always talked about the fact I was raised as a Penn State football fan. So I innately hated Notre Dame. And I hated everything about Notre Dame. I was 0 for 4 against them when I played in college. I just loathed everything about Notre Dame. And I say to this day that, like, my favorite group of dudes to be around in my professional career was this team and these Notre Dame guys. And it was awesome. I had a blast. And I tell everybody, like, you can tell when you played in this league that it was created by players because we all understood the grind that was asked of us in the past. And you could tell that every little thing was kind of detailed around what we've dealt with in the past. Like, the requirement for the weekend was minimal, right? You come in, you practice, you study together, you play your game, like, middle of the day, right? 24-hour turnaround. The games were shorter, the field was shorter, the action was faster and more physical. So, we loved playing every weekend. It was a really good time. And the fact that Coach Nat was able to create a culture, you felt like you were part of a program that's been around for a long time. And I think that's why we were successful, because I remember saying the first weekend, look, in my experience, every year in the pros, you go against everybody's loaded. I always hated that term. Oh, you guys are loaded this year. Yeah, it's professional lacrosse. Everybody's loaded. The difference was the teams that won the championship always had the best locker room. And that's what we tried to establish early. Me, Harry, and Joe was we want a great locker room. Everyone has a voice. We all respect each other. This is a business, but we're here to have a good time and win together, and we're going to watch out for each other. And I love that about this group for sure.
No, I mean, I got to watch it twice live. I was able to go to the one in Hamilton, and then I was there for the championship weekend. And watching that compared to college was just incredible to see how big of a difference it was in terms of, like, the speed of play and everything. And, being able to see that on TV truly, I think, brings in just more fans just because of the play style of it.
Yeah.
So now, obviously, going into year 2 with this, short season, this PLL championship series, you won't be participating, as far as I know, correct?
I won't be physically playing, no, but I am going to be a part of it for sure.
So now that 1 year is done, what is kind of your role now with the PLL? Or what are we going to see more of Greg doing with the PLL?
I don't know if I'm at liberty to give you the details yet, but I will say this, that the face-off position has always been, I think over-talked about compared to how much it's analyzed. And I think people talk, oh, Billy went 75% yesterday. Cool, sweet. But no one ever gets into the, minutia of it and explains, like, what this guy's doing to win or what the counter perspective is, or, when these guys faced off last time, what was the technique used against this guy? So for my part, at least from, like, just an objective, like, Twitter follower of the league, I'm looking for ways to create more of a matchup feel for people so that they can see, like, when people look at it, they're like, you have an up-and-comer, Connor Farrell, but nobody talks about the fact that Bones Kelly went over 70% like 3 of the last 4 games of the season, right? He went almost 80% against the Chrome in the playoff game. Like, guys need their narratives talked about and why they're good in certain moments. And my goal is for face-offs, when people watch it, for it to be as understandable as when someone watches football and they're like, oh, yeah, that was holding. I get it. I want them to understand why a guy is doing a defensive turn. I want that vernacular and that lexicon to be out there. So that's my goal. My goal is to find ways for people to watch it and not just have a respect for the face-off guys, but to understand what they're actually doing and why.
Yeah, no, that's certainly awesome, and we as lacrosse fans are certainly excited to see the growth of PL, and we're definitely excited during these tough times to watch some lacrosse on TV this summer. So it'll be a lot of fun to watch, and we're excited for it. We're going to go a little bit back to your Team USA days, and we're going to talk about playing in the 2018 Worlds and winning a gold medal in Israel and that whole experience.
Yeah, I was so thankful to be part of that. I understood my role very well, that, we had Trevor, who's Trevor. And, in my career, I've never been a backseat number 2 guy, really. But I took on that role wholeheartedly, because one of the things that Danowski and that staff did such a good job of is making sure that everybody understood that if you have an ego, this is not going to work out for you. And because of that, it won't work out for all of us. We spent way more time getting to know each other than we did worrying about, going over X's and O's to an exhausting amount of time, right? Like, we spent a lot of time trusting each other, because we always talked about the last day, that gold medal game. We want to get there, and we want to trust each other, because if we all trust each other, no matter how bad it looks at any point in the game, we're going to get past it. And that's exactly the way it worked, right? So when I came on, I knew my role was, I've played in this before. I understand this. I know I still have gas in the tank. I understand the international rules. My job is to do my job on the field, but also help Trevor do his. And when Trevor's hot, let him go out there and take his draws, give him counsel. And then when they need me, I go out and do my thing. And it worked out very well that way. What I will say is, one of the things that was challenging was I had 104-degree fever the day before we left for Israel. I had of course, the worst upper respiratory infection of my life. And I went to the doctor, and they were literally like, look, it's viral. There's nothing we can really give you. And to be honest, because of WADA drug testing rules, we can't even give you Sudafed. So I tried to sleep on the plane. I couldn't. The entire flight there, I was miserable. And when I got to Israel, I literally wanted to kill myself. I had a guttural cough. I went from 210 to I went from 215 to 199 while we were over there. And I didn't feel okay enough to eat bread until our first game against Canada, about 5 days in. So it was really rough from that standpoint. But, I got through that, and I think, just having the team around us was great. And man, what a special trip that was. And winning that gold medal, obviously from a selfish reason, I felt like a monkey was off my back, because I honestly felt so terrible about 2014. I really felt like I let people down. And I remember coming home, my mom was like, you just set like a US record. Like, you raced off at like 85%. Like, what else could you have done? And when you compete, there's always something, right? You always say, man, that one false start, or, I could have taken it to the goal that one time and I didn't, like all that stuff creeps in your head. So for 4 years, I had to live with that, and it exercised a lot of demons for me.
One thing I found interesting, obviously being there in Israel, was, us in Canada, we were staying in this beautiful 5-star resort right on the beach. And you guys were actually living in a community. Talk about that experience for you guys, and just, what that whole, just temporary living was for you guys.
Weird. It was weird, man. The first few days, I felt like I wasn't part of the team because I was so sick. Admittedly, like, I was very jealous because guys were getting up, having stretches and runs with each other, and I just wanted to like bury myself in the Dead Sea somewhere. But the kibbutz, the idea was to have us off by ourselves to think, so that we're not getting into discussions or arguments. Let everybody else go to the pool and live their dream. We have a job to do. And that was the mantra for 4 years. We have a job to do. This isn't supposed to be a vacation. This isn't supposed to be fun. You didn't sign up for fun. You signed up to win, and you signed up to do your job. Like when people were like, yo, we're going to stay, we're going to go to Tel Aviv for like 4 days. I'm like, get me back to America as quickly as you can. I'll take a hovercraft. I'll do whatever to get me out of here. Cause I was just tired of not having, cell phone service. I missed my wife and kid. I was sick. Like, I was like, go, Mel, thank you so much. I'm out of here. So, it was good to isolate because we got a lot of time. We all have these blue Adirondack chairs at home now. We all got them from the coaches because at the kibbutz, there was these huge group of blue Adirondack chairs, and we would all sit in a circle every day, and Coach Dino would ask us to explain something about ourselves, and we would talk to each other, and we get to know each other, and it was really cool. And that symbol of that circle of chairs, someone had taken a photo, I think it was KU, and we all have that picture. And like, that's what that whole entire experience, that's what I remember the most, was us sitting in that circle together and getting to know each other. And being the old guy on the team, and to be around guys that I've played with, but also guys who were coming up, it was really cool.
Yeah, no, certainly. And winning is certainly so special. And especially capping your career off with that is probably the best feeling ever. So we're going to talk a little bit now about your Face-Off Academy and kind of your social media presence. And we want to kind of get into how you started the Face-Off Academy. I know you talked a little bit about it, but what brought it all about?
It was a combination of things. At that point in time, Jerry was, had pro athletics going. Chris was playing lacrosse. He was also coaching at Westfield in New Jersey. And, I had just come back after my knee injury. And I remember telling Jerry in the past, like, I'm a strength coach, but during the summer, a lot of my clients, they either go on vacations or they go out east or they have Hamptons homes. So what I was looking to do was just a face-off tour and do like a 6 clinic. I was like, I don't want to do overnight camps. That's just, everybody does that. I want to do like very hard-hitting 3-hour instructional clinics and hit as many places as we can outside of the Northeast. All these kids in Long Island and stuff, they all have this. I want to go to other places. Our first event was in Delray Beach, actually, in Florida. But so we decided we were going to create the Face-Off Academy. And the goal was to teach a system of face-offs that had nothing to do with cheating, first time ever, and create a system of training rather than, hey, kids, this is what worked for me that one time. Create a lexicon and and break this down into a system of first move, second move, exits, and then counters, and then both knee down and stand up stances to give kids variations. And it was a massive hit in Delray Beach. And then we were asked, as soon as we would leave places, they would email us like asking us to come back. And it went from like a 6-stop tour to, wow, okay, now in the fall, we're doing weekly practices. Now in the winter, people want to do these massive events. So what I was doing was I was working 5 days a week as a strength coach. And then on weekends, I was traveling and doing Face-Off Academy. And it became this massive hit. And, the people that were teaching face-offs before us hated us, still do, because they had a grip on this whole thing. And all of a sudden here we came with this system and we were, teaching and preaching, not cheating and doing it the right way. And bah humbug. So we were a very disruptive force. You have these guys who are playing pro who are also saying, we should change the rules and make this better for everybody. Yay. And everyone's like, you guys suck. I hate you. But the kids loved it and the parents loved it. So yeah, I eventually sold my strength training company, went full-time coaching. And, the Face-Off Academy now is, our goal is to not just coach face-offs for kids, to coach coaches, to coach refs, to keep the position where it is and make it better so that the sport's better. And, recruiting has become, 90% of what we do now. So, we're helping kids understand the steps they need to take. We're talking to college coaches, helping them evaluate guys, giving them lists of kids to look at, going to colleges and breaking stuff down with their staffs. So it's a full-time job and it's got a lot of different, plates are spinning all the time. But our national showcase is what we're the most proud of. And every year, the first weekend of December, we do our national showcase, 250 kids from all over North America for one weekend in Jersey. And they compete, they train, and then we have a national tournament. And, it's become this massive hit. We run it as well as we can. We plan it 11 months in advance. And, we started it, I believe, in 2014. So, yeah, so it's time's flying. We're creeping up on 10 years and, soon. So it's been really awesome. And the amount of guys that we've, you know, Peyton Smith, we just brought on to our staff. Trevor Baptiste, we brought onto our staff. Coming full circle, kids we coached in 8th grade are now coming back around and working for us, and it's become this huge community, which is awesome.
Yeah, no, for sure. And one of the things I love, too, is you're bringing in the top face-off guys in the game. For example, a buddy of mine, Jake Withers, now works for you guys, and Wiz does a great job with that stuff. And you guys have all these guys that, you know, one time you could be working with Jake, next time Trevor, next time you, next time Chris Mattis. Like, you guys, you know, you get to learn from all these different guys. And we've sent some of our kids from the Ottawa Capitals to you to work with you guys just because there's nothing like that around here.
Yeah, and you know what we've tried to create, like I said, was the vernacular. So if you go work with Jake or Trevor or Jerry or me, you're going to get the exact same system, the same exact verbiage, just a different pair of eyeballs on it. So kids are comfortable saying, wow, like, I'm going to continue to progress. These guys are never going to like counteract each other. They're always going to help me go on the same path, which is unique. No one else does that. You know, you'll see people that are like, oh, you know, bring this guy in. He had a good game last week. He's now, you know, our clinic guy, and he teaches something completely different than this guy. And it's just like a gun for hire type of thing. But when you have full-time face-off coaches all teaching the same system, it becomes, you see a huge difference in the players. The other part of it is, and you guys know this, like, people will go out and be like, oh, this is the guy who was first-team All-American last year. He's coaching you now. That's awesome. Yeah, just because you're good at something doesn't mean you're an elite coach or that you're an elite teacher. If that was the case, then Michael Jordan, Magic Johnson would be the greatest NBA coaches of all time, right? It would be that simple, but it's not. And it's usually like some random nerdy guy who was like a backup point guard or something who just analyzed the game really well and can understand, like a cerebral person like Tim Duncan, right? Like, he'll be a great NBA coach probably one day. So you need somebody, yes, who has proven their ability on the field, but what's way more important is, one, your ability to convey it to other kids and help them get better, because your name will get them in the door the first time. They're not going to stick around if you're not making them better. And then the second part of it is your maturity. And like Peyton Smith, we just brought on, he is a hardworking, mature kid that is not going to take this opportunity for granted. And that's the biggest thing when it comes to selecting a coach.
Yeah, no, certainly. And I really like what you say about that. And not all the best coaches were the best players in the world. It usually comes like from a guy who grinded out his time, maybe barely getting to the professional level, but they analyze the game very well. And it's so true when you say that. Like, I'm a hockey guy at heart, and when I look at the best hockey coaches in the world, they're always got fourth liners or guys who barely made crack the lineup. So it just really hits home when you say something like that to me. Yeah. So we're going to get into our final segment here. We're going to ask you who your favorite referee is and why.
That's tough, man, because I could ramble off like 50 different names. I'll give you 3. Okay. I love Matty Palin. Matty Palin has the best cadence in lacrosse. It's real easy to play, you know, and he's always like open and honest in between. As long as you come to him professionally and with respect, he's always open to talking to you. You yell at him or give him some, you know, you gum him on the way off the field, and he will chirp you right back and like embarrass you. So I love how fiery Matty is. I love Doug Donovan. Doug Donovan did our Lizards games for years. Very like a quiet, like complete opposite of Matty, like quiet, talk to me, tell me what the problem is. We'll work with you. Really great referee. And then Abbott. I love Abbott. Abbott's like, he's like a combination of the two. Like, he's not going to yell at you. He's just going to throw a flag. Like, he'll throw 4 flags on your way off the field if you want to keep talking. He's just not there for that crap. So he's really easy to deal with. And you can discuss stuff. I love the guys who understand who understand their job. They take it seriously, but they also understand, like, they'll give you a chance to discuss to them because they're not, you know, up on a high horse. They understand that you're a player, they're a ref. Their job is to make sure that everything is like taken care of. But they're not there to get yelled at by you at all. And that's what I love about it. So those 3 kind of like come off the top of my head.
As a face-off guy, how I know this, but how important really is it, that relationship with the refs and studying the referees? Because I know at Hopkins especially, our face-off guys used to study cadences of the refs. They would find out who was the refs that week, and they would study the cadence. And I thought that was I thought it was fucking nuts. But I mean, in retrospect, it makes complete sense.
When I was in college, I would study the rep. So I would watch the tape. I would barely watch my own tape. Like I would just go back and make notes and be like, okay, I should have done this. This is happening. But I would study the referees' cadences, and because back then there was no set and backup. So you had to watch and be like, okay, how long are we down there before they're blowing the whistle? Because you don't want to get caught with a ref who, as soon as your gloves touch the ground, they're blowing it and you get smoked for a fast break. The biggest thing that I used to have to watch film on, and I hated that I had to waste time on it, was what is this dude doing cheating-wise that the ref's letting him get away with? Because we had a kid who showed up. He was a Stony Brook guy my junior year, and he was like third in the country in faceoffs after the first few weeks. I'm like, who is this dude? And I watched film, and I was like, he has two stances, and when he uses this particular stance, it means he grabs the ball with his hand every time. And I remember that game. He's just grabbing it with his hand over and over again, and I'm having an aneurysm. And that was the first time I went on a knee. I went on a knee, and on the face-off, when they blew the whistle, I just crushed his wrists until they called me for withholding, and I did it like 3 times in a row to try to hurt him. So, when you watch the refs, it's important because you need to understand their cadence because it's part of the game. But also, you don't want to have this guy do something weird you've never seen before, and you see the ref, and you're like, this guy's going to get away with this thing. So, it's important. It is important. I would watch a ton of film on refs. But it's funny now, like when I'm talking to Peyton Smith, who's going to be playing in the league this year, like I'm literally giving him coaching on the cadence for every single official. And I'm like, this is, every official, here's their jersey number, here's their last name, here's their cadence. And it's important. It's an important part of it. But yeah, like the film study is 90% of this face-off thing. I tell kids, if you spent less time taking live reps against your friends who you're never going to face off against in a game, and you spent your time looking at film and breaking yourself down and breaking your opponents down, you can be, if you're more cerebral about this position, you can be top of the top. But, physicality only gets you so far.
Yeah, definitely. It's so cool that there's so much more going into a lacrosse face-off than a lot of lacrosse fans wouldn't know, and it's great that you explained that. So, Greg, we thank you for coming on here and talking to us today, and we wish you continued success with your face-off academy, and it's awesome what you do for the game of lacrosse, and lacrosse fans are lucky to have a person like you in the game.
Thanks a lot, guys. I really appreciate it, and I respect what you guys are doing too. So thank you very much for having me on.
Thanks, Greg.
Thanks for listening to another episode of the Sticks and Pics Lacrosse podcast presented by Lacrosse Unlimited. A reminder that you can find all your lacrosse needs at lacrosseunlimited.com. Be sure to check out our social media pages on Instagram and Twitter at SticksPicsLax and on Facebook at Sticks and Pics Lacrosse. There you will find more lacrosse content and giveaways. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel and Apple Podcasts under Sticks and Pics Lacrosse. Shout out to Brad Macarthur and Steven Stam for putting together the 2020 Global Lacrosse Summit. 50 experts broke down different aspects of the game to help the growth of our sport. You can watch any interview that you miss. For more information, please reach out to our social media pages.